You're watching Adam the Bull on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. Coming up on today's show, we start October with more disappointment from a Browns loss. But there is hope in the form of the Cleveland Guardians. Plus, sad news from baseball, but also good news in baseball. A lot of different things to get to throughout the day, and I appreciate you joining me as always. If you're not using the BetRivers app, I'm not sure what you're doing. It's your best home for all your gambling needs, from football to basketball to baseball, tennis, and more. So check out the BetRivers app if you haven't done so already and start playing. So yesterday, if you weren't exasperated enough by how the Cleveland Browns have played, you may have been worse if you saw this. Mary Kay Cabot, Cleveland.com, tweets at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy said he'll run more this week to make sure he's not tired on some plays like he was in the loss to the Raiders. So far this season, Jerry Jeudy has played decently. He's played pretty well. In fact, if you look at statistically, Jerry Jeudy is leading the Browns in receiving yards. 197 would put him on pace for 850 yards, give or take, and 4 touchdowns. So nothing spectacular, but in fact, you look at his numbers, they're basically on par with what he's done in his career, which is not be worthy of a first-round pick, but, solid player. Now, statistically, nobody on the Browns is off to a good start. Jerome Ford is on pace for about 850 yards rushing. Jeudy about 850 yards receiving. Amari Cooper's, it's not good. In fact, the Browns only have they have 2 guys with over 100 yards rushing, including Watson, and only 2 over 85 yards receiving in Jeudy and Cooper. Certainly, Deshaun Watson is not on a great pace. He's not even on pace for 3,000 yards, let alone 4 or 5. But, not a lot of guys are at this point. So statistically, not great. But I actually think Jerry Jeudy's played pretty well so far. If I had to say who's been their best skill position player so far this year, I'd probably say it was Jerry Jeudy. I think he's been their best. I mean, it's not a high bar. Nobody's played particularly well. A little frog in my throat this morning. Oh. And if the guy performing the best is saying he needs to run more because he's getting tired on plays, I mean, I don't even know what to say about the level of conditioning that this team has. And I'm sure I'll get the 82 fat jokes I always get when I talk about conditioning. And you're right. You got me. I'm not well conditioned. I'm in terrible shape. Now, my job is not to play professional football and be in shape. When you're a professional football player, your job is to be in shape. That's a big part of your job. And the fact that the guy who's been your most successful skill position player, again, not having a particularly great season, but the guy who's been the most successful skill position player is saying he's getting tired, so he needs to run more this week. We're a month into the season. What has happened here? The Browns had an entire offseason to work on their own, OTAs, mini camp. They had preseason that started, 2 months ago, more than 2 months ago, late July. You had weeks and weeks of training camp. You had the preseason. You had the 2 weeks in between the preseason and the regular season, whatever happens then. And you've had 4 football games. And in the 4th football game, Jerry Jeudy, a wide receiver, is saying he's getting tired, this is not great. Now, some would say, well, Bull, you guys always want honesty from the players, and now you get honesty, and now you're complaining about it. And, yeah, okay, that's true. That's fair. Yes, we do want honesty, and yes, sometimes when players are honest, they're criticized for it. You don't get a pass for being honest. Shouldn't that be the bar, being honest? Players lie all the time. Coaches lie all the time. I'm not giving him a pass just because he was honest. We look at the situation with DeJuan Jones. You look at the situation with what's going on with Jedrick Wills. The team, you look at their team speed, bottom of the barrel. You look at their ability to tackle, hustle plays, right? Tackling is all about effort. All these guys know how to tackle, but being good at it's about the effort. It's about your athleticism. If you look at this from an article on ESPN that I saw this morning, Daniel Ofesi, I believe is his name. He's a new Browns beat reporter covering the Browns for ESPN. Had this stat. On running plays, the Browns are allowing 2.24 yards after contact per rush. Now, that may not sound bad to you, but let me tell you, it is. That, in fact, is the worst mark in the entire NFL. So the Browns are bad at tackling in general. They're giving up the most rushing yards per game, per attempt after contact. They're out of shape. They're slow. They're undisciplined. Lots of penalties. Often looking unprepared. Bad body language. Bad on third downs. The players get a ton of the blame. I had my buddy Axel. Axel's been a long-time fan. We've become friends. I've known him since moving to Cleveland pretty much. And he was bummed out that I was putting a lot of this on Kevin Stefanski because he and I have always been of the mindset that this is on the players and too much blame is put on the coaches. And I still feel that way in general, that too much blame, when things go wrong, fans quickly blame the coaches. And I know there's people going too far, want Kevin Stefanski fired. I am certainly not one of those people. But even though I believe coaches are often blamed too quickly and blamed too often and blamed too much for the failure of the players, and don't get me wrong, I give nobody a pass on this team. Everybody on the Browns offense has been lousy, pretty much. Jeudy's been decent. Everybody else in the offense has been pretty awful. And outside of J.O.K., Delpit, Myles Garrett, and Denzel Ward, I got no love for anybody in the defense either right now. The players have been bad, and there's no excuses. This is mostly on the players. However, I have seen Kevin Stefanski in the last couple of weeks make more mistakes of management than I've ever seen him make. The penalties continue to be a huge problem. Again, a lot of that's on the players. They're adults. They got to be able to deal with that themselves. But there's got to be some consequences. And if there's not, players are less likely to change the way they do things. And I believe it's a good time for Kevin Stefanski to streamline what he's doing and as a good leader does, give some responsibility to someone else and focus on the most important job that he has right now, which is time management, clock management, timeout management, the big picture. Let Ken Dorsey call plays. This has zero to do with Kevin Stefanski's actual play calling. It has to do with everything else. This is not about Ken Dorsey being better at calling plays. It's about the fact that it seems that right now Kevin Stefanski would be better as a coach if somebody else were calling the plays. And that doesn't mean that I'm right. That just seems like the best answer right now because the team is an unmitigated disaster. And I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but there's been some discussion about apathy, and that's the worst thing. I know Jay Crawford said that yesterday. I was watching my man Mike Polk. He put up a Browns video for WKYC. Mike was talking about apathy and his dad and Bud Shaw and Mike McIntyre. And Mike is NPR here in Cleveland. And Bud, of course, covered the Browns and has covered sports in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio for many years. And these guys have been diehard Browns fans, and they're apathetic about what's happening for the team. Yes, I think a big part of that is Deshaun Watson. But another part is just they've gotten your hopes up so many times that fans are just kind of sick of it and sick of buying in. They never follow up a good season with a good season. Never. They haven't done it in 3 decades. And this, I don't know. Listen, Browns fans aren't going anywhere. Even if there is some apathy now, it will turn around in a hurry. There's no doubt about it. People are not going away from their Browns fandom. But it is frustrating that every time the expectations go up, that's it. The last time the Browns went to the playoffs back-to-back years, of course, was in the 80s when they went 5 years in a row from 85 to 89. And since 89, of course, the Browns have made the playoffs 4 times, but never back-to-back, 94, 2002, 2020, and then 2023. And the season's certainly not over at 1-3, but certainly not looking particularly good, their chances of making the playoffs. Somebody asked me recently, when's the last time the Browns had a top 5 offense? And statistically, if you go by the old school stats, the Browns have not had a top 5 offense in terms of points since 1987. In fact, the only time the Browns have been even in the top 10 in points or yards since 1988 is the 2007 season with Derek Anderson, where they finished 8th in points and 8th in yardage. That's the only time. In 2020, they were middle of the pack, 14-16. Last year, they actually were 10th. Browns were actually 10th in points last year. So apathy is the worst thing that can happen. I don't buy that that's totally taking over the fan base right now, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. And people are exasperated by this team, and I think they're excited about baseball too. And I think there's some people right now, and maybe that changes if the Guardians don't go on a run. The Guardians will play their first playoff game Saturday against either the Tigers or Astros in Cleveland. Whoever wins that series will come to Cleveland, and they'll play game 1, and then game 2 will be Monday next week. And there's a real chance. The Guardians went over 2 million fans for the first time since 2017. Great attendance. It was their best per-game attendance, I want to say, in almost 20 years. So there's an opportunity here for the Guardians to capitalize on a fan base that's frustrated with the Browns, that may, to some percentage, be apathetic about the Browns, and that wants to see a winner and wants to see success. And if the Guardians could go on a postseason run here, knock on wood, if they could somehow, I don't know what knocking on wood is. I'm not superstitious. I don't know why I said that. If they could somehow win the World Series, they could really, you could move up the hierarchy. Listen, the Browns will always be kings of Northeast Ohio, but the Guardians have a chance to at least close the gap a little, with a big postseason run here. Let's hope it happens. I want this team so badly to do well and to get to the World Series and win it all. But me hoping for it, you hoping for it, doesn't make it happen. They've got to play at a high level as they have for most of this season. They did for the first 3 months. They did for the last month. Let's ignore those 2 months in the middle there. Hopefully they won't play like that. But I think they head into the postseason in a good spot. And, yes, I'm a little worried about the rust because they'll go a full week without playing after getting rained out their last game. I am a little worried about that. The Tigers or the Astros are going to coming off at least 2 games. The Tigers, in particular, if they win, had to play hard down the stretch to clinch the playoff spot. So it'll be something to keep, that I'm a little worried about. But ultimately, I think the Guardians are going to win in the first round, and I think they've got a great chance to win it all. I really do. I saw Adnan Virk, formerly of ESPN, now of MLB Network, pick the Guardians to win. That was cool to see. But I don't really care ultimately what other people think. And it doesn't matter. Baseball's really impossible to predict. If you get it right, you're getting lucky. It's the hardest sport to predict in the postseason. But the Guardians have a good chance. That's all you can ask for. They have a really good chance. They're as good, if not better, than any team in the American League. They have the best bullpen. They have the best defense. They have the best base running. Obviously, they're behind some of these teams in starting rotation and lineup overall, but not far enough behind that it can't be made up by the other areas where they're significantly better. By far the best bullpen, by far the best defense, by far the best base running. They're an athletic team. They've got to take advantage of that. And none of these teams, in my mind, have a great lineup. I thought the Orioles did, but they haven't played that way. The Royals and the Yankees, like the Guardians, have a top-heavy lineup. Be big for the Royals if they could get Pasquantino back for the playoffs. The Tigers lineup is not that impressive top to bottom. They're playing really well. They're playing really well with a bunch outside of Tarek Skubal, who's going to win the Cy Young. The rest of their pitching is a bunch of no-names. They've used openers. It's been a weird run for them. Astros have the experience, but I really like the Guardians' chances. I think the style of baseball they're playing can work this year. There's not an overwhelmingly good team that can just kill them with the home runs. And the Guardians, I've said for a couple of years now, you can't win if you're bottom of the barrel in home runs, but you can win middle of the pack, and that's what they are. They were above the middle. I think they finished 13th in home runs. That's fine. They don't have to be number one. They just got to be competitive as a power hitting team. And this year they were more than that. And they could win that way. With Bybee, some innings from a few other guys at the top. Guardians have the lead in the 5th, 6th inning. They're going to win. They have a better chance than any other team. And that includes the Dodgers and the Phillies and Milwaukee and the Mets and the Braves and who am I forgetting? And the Padres in the National League. Now they got to do it. Can't just have me talk about it. Now they got to do it. Sad news in sports yesterday. 2 legendary former players both died. Pete Rose, of course, maybe the most controversial American athlete of all time in terms of non court related stuff. Obviously you have O.J. Simpson and stuff, but Pete Rose in terms of the gambling, of course. Pete was 83 years old. And Dikembe Mutombo, who died of brain cancer at 58 yesterday. Not quite the status of Pete Rose in baseball, but Dikembe Mutombo, by all accounts, was a fantastic human being, did incredible charity work, was really funny in commercials, was a great basketball player, a great representative. So condolences to both families. Obviously, Pete Rose, there's a lot of ugliness there. I know a lot of people are pissed he never got in the Hall. He was never eligible for the Hall because he was suspended. Pete Rose did that all to himself. Nobody forced him to bet on games that he was managing. I think if he would have come clean initially, I think by now he would have been in the Hall of Fame. I know a lot of people think he'll get in now that he's passed. I don't know about that. I don't know that it matters at this point. But obviously condolences to his family. And on the field, The guy was an incredible player, a nonstop motor. You know, he played the way we want all players to play. I think Pete Rose and Dikembe Mutombo both had that in common. They were easy players to root for on the field. Dikembe remained that way off the court. Pete Rose, not so much. But it's a shame what happened, and that because of his choices, he was not celebrated by Major League Baseball off the field, and that's too bad. One other thing from baseball that I wanted to hit on, and that's yesterday, kind of off the radar, but Major League Baseball announced that they're going to go back to players wearing their team uniforms in the All-Star game. And I love this. I've been saying for years that was always great as a kid. You'd see your player wearing his jersey, and everybody had different jerseys, and it was cool. I'm glad they're going back to that. I hated the team National League, American League jerseys, and the only difference were the caps. This is how it should be, and I'm glad they're going back to it. All right, thanks to Z. Thanks to Max for producing today. I'll be on Thursday at 2 p.m. live. Your chance to jump in with me, and then I'll be back on after the Browns game on Sunday. We'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. See you, everybody.